All right, it's your old pal Jizzo here once more, and I'm going to ask you once again to please subscribe to this channel. 80% of the people that watch this channel don't subscribe, and so I'm asking you, hit the button down there, just do it, subscribe, it's done, and all of a sudden I'll be a lot cuter, which will be great. Here we go. All right, I'm excited. I'm working on music once again. Now, what is this now? Solo record number 7? It's lucky 7. You know, in some ways, making records is easier because there's better gear and there's better technology. But in other ways, nothing's changed. Making a record requires a lot of work. Discipline, experience, a small bit of talent, being your own producer. I guess it's what everyone does these days. Records are self-produced, self-recorded. The difference for me is I'm making music now for the love of making music. You know, it's weird. Shit has come full circle. It takes me back to my early cassette demo days, listening to the song you just wrote in your shitty car stereo, dreaming of the day that you could be in a real studio. We still had all our hopes and dreams back then, didn't we? Before they were pounded into submission by music's cold, harsh reality. But we're still here, we're doing well, and we are still creating new songs. So it's all good. So right now, I am in producer mode. I've done my drums, my bass guitar, most of the rhythm and the lead guitars, and now it actually starts to get fun. I've assembled the ingredients for the cake. I can see the cake. I can envision it. Soon I get to bake it, and then I get to eat it. As a solo artist, the goal, the mission, is to make the songs that you wrote sound as close as you can to how you pictured them in your head. Heavy, flowing, melodic. You want them to jump out of the speakers. I made my original demos for this record on GarageBand with the drum machine accompaniment. I handed those demos out to all my players, and they returned to me the finished drums, the bass, the guitar, etc. And now my mixing engineer and I will listen, and we'll listen, and we'll listen. It's a listening game. Here's where my experience kicks in. I want these songs to sound like my previous 2 records, All You Need Is Soul and my latest one, Hell California. See, I have those right here on hand to listen to and to compare to and to try to beat. So the process of being a producer is multi-layered. I wrote the parts, so it's up to me to explain what I want to the players who are going to play on it. My drummer, Chili, Dave Moreno, has done most of my solo records so far, so we have sort of an understanding. He also has his own home studio, which helps a lot. Technology has also improved since he did my first record way back in 2000, so that also helps. But some things, again, have not changed. If you cannot articulate what you want, you won't get it, and you'll have to go back and you'll have to re-record, which costs more money. So as a producer, you need to discuss, you need to explain yourself and try to be as specific as you can as to what you want your players to play. So when Chili sits down and he plays these songs, he's got a roadmap of what he needs. For example, is the ending of the song a fade? That means adding extra bars. Or say, I need you to bring it up here. More drums, make it bigger. All this stuff, you have to know what you want, or you and your drummer will just get frustrated. You told me to do this, man. Well, I was wrong. We'll try it this way. See, drums are especially hard in that respect. Guitars and vocals can be punched in and out, but drums, generally speaking, have to be a complete performance. So you better have a good idea of what you want. And also, if you can, have your drummer do several takes of the song so you can choose, make one a little busier, make one less busy, and so on. It's good to have choices. Budget is important. Real drums have to be done in a real studio. And real studios cost real money. $30 an hour, $50 an hour, maybe more. If you don't have your shit together, you can use up your budget pretty fast. Most of these record companies that still give you money for an advance, and there's only a few of them now, they're only going to give you enough money to make your record. Say $10,000. My record, all you need is soul, went $1,000 over my budget, which I had to pay for myself. Lesson learned. If you spend too much money on recording drums, how are you going to mix or master? See, that's where you really need to spend your money, so you can't blow your money recording and re-recording if you don't have your shit together. See, this is where home studios come in. Guitars, vocals, bass, they can all be done at home if you have the right equipment to do so. I talk about all this in my Art of Singing series, part 6. I did all my vocals for this record here at my house, and it didn't cost me anything. It just cost time. I probably saved over $1,000 doing it at home. Being your own producer means you have to stay on budget, but that doesn't mean you can turn in shit tracks. The majority chunk of your recording budget must go to the mixing and the mastering, and most engineers are in the range of between $30 an hour and $50 an hour. I mean, that's for the reasonable ones. I'm not talking about the $100 or $500 an hour guys, because that's not in my budget. So staying on budget is important, but also keeping the quality up. Don't use shitty plugins to record guitars that sound like those old Rockmans from the 1990s. Don't record in a place where your guitar constantly goes out of tune, or you will regret the end result. If your home is not a controlled setting, then spend the money and go to someone else's home studio that is a controlled setting, or you're wasting your time. Your guitars will be unusable once you start stacking them because tuning becomes an issue. So you've cut your tracks, the drums, bass, guitar. Now here's the thing. When you start putting the parts together, you need to stay flexible. See, right now, I have all my rhythm guitar parts recorded on a Wolfgang guitar. See, my guitar player, Darren, he chose this guitar because they are really good at staying in tune, even with a whammy bar. There's nothing worse than having to deal with an out-of-tune guitar in the studio. It's a fucking nightmare. On my last record, we recorded guitars with a Les Paul and a Gibson SG, which SGs, let's face it, they are super temperamental as far as tuning. We spent a lot of time with tuning issues, so the Wolfgang guitar was a welcome respite. And it sounds good, but now I tell you that I listened to the bass tracks, I've decided that I want a Les Paul guitar added to the rhythm tracks. Not on all the parts, on all the songs, but on a substantial portion of the record. I gotta go back. I have to go back. Darren has to go in and re-record. He has to double what he just did with the new guitar, the Les Paul. I mean, he's good enough to do that, but it takes extra time and extra money. But that's a decision that I've made as a producer based on looking at the songs from the 1,000-foot view and realizing I want the shit to sound heavier. Let's face it, heavier is better. I want a double quarter pounder, not just the single patty. So when these Les Pauls are done, and they're being done as we speak, and of course they sound amazing, after all, it is a fucking Les Paul, we will add them to what we've already have and continue forward. Working with lead guitar players in the studio is tricky. See, a producer has to get the best performance out of their lead guitar player, but you have to do it in a way that doesn't with the vibe. Guitar players have egos. That's what makes them lead guitar players, let's face it. They have to have an ego to do what they do. So as a producer, you have to once again explain what you want if you want the desired result. So how do you do it? You do this by guiding them, by cheerleading the great parts, and then suggesting alternatives when you don't like the other parts. All this has to be done without being shitty or condescending. You can destroy the vibe in the studio with a few choice insults to his musicianship or his manhood. It's far better to encourage. For example, your opening is great. Now you need to go somewhere with it. Or you're repeating yourself here. Try something different. See, all the suggestions are done with encouragement, not that fucking sucks. Try it again. See, I have a relationship with Darren because we've done several records together, going back to 1992 with the Love Hate Let's Rumble record. See, if I have a song that sounds like AC/DC, which I always do, then I will say, you know what, play it like Angus, or play this part like Jimmy Page, or like Slash, or in this part, think of Voodoo Child, Stevie Ray Vaughan. You got to articulate what you want and you'll get what you need. Or I often will sing into a tape recorder, scat sing a solo, and I'll send it to Darren, and then that gives him a rough roadmap of what I hear in my head. Then he will take that and make it better. So that's the plan. Just remember, the people who you have play on your record aren't robots. They're guys with egos and feelings, and as a producer, you have to get people to do what you want in a positive way, not in a degrading or a belittling fashion. Don't treat people like drum machines. On the other hand, and this does happen from time to time, sometimes you don't know what you want. I'm talking mostly about guitar overdubs. The guitar parts in between the parts of the songs, like the intro solo, or the licks in the verse, or the ins and outs after the choruses, or in the bridge section, or after the solo when the chorus fades out. There's always some soloing in there. All these little parts have to be magical. This is perhaps the hardest part of the process. There's 10, 15 places for tasty guitar parts, and they all have to be good. Fixing. I've been fixing this whole time. I've gone back with the lead vocals. I actually re-sang 2 of the songs on this new record because I thought I could do it better, and I did. Again, go back to my artist singing series. I talk about singing your vocals at home, not spending shitloads of money in the studio. Some of my background vocals were, upon inspection, slightly flat, so I had to pick them apart, and I went back and I fixed them. Everything must be in key, man. Everything must be pitch perfect. So you can, in theory, fix a flat or a sharp vocal with Pro Tools. And I know for a fact that a lot of singers really lean on Pro Tools because actually they're not very good singers in the studio. But generally, I do all that shit at home. But let me tell you something. The vocals, the guitars, everything has to sound like a performance. It has to sound like the band just played the song in one take. So I'm in the middle of it now. I'm getting my new music ready. And it makes me smile, man, because the process is tough, but as a songwriter, you cannot replace that feeling of accomplishment when a song starts to take shape in front of you. It's magical, man. It's totally magical. So maybe I will continue and do some more of these videos as this process works itself through. So I hope you dig it. It's your old pal Jizzo, rockin' and rollin'. We'll see you next time.